In this module, we're going to talk about vocal compression, what compressors are available in each DAW, and how to use them.
So why do we have or need compression on the vocals? Well, one of the main uses of compression is an effect in itself. If you're a trained singer, you can sing at a consistent level and keep the difference between loud and soft passages within acceptable limits. Untrained singers, there may be varying degrees of loudness in the take. So all we're doing with this compression is to bring down the highest peaks above the threshold that we're going to set. Leaving the lower levels just as they are, and after that the level is restored so that the peaks that we have compressed are the same level as they were to start with. It's probably easier to show you than it is to explain, but we'll come to that. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm actually in Logic for this, so I've got a rough balance of the vocals that Luke did. So what I'm going to do is put these tracks together in one single fader, and we're going to compress the whole vocal. We can do separate compression, but we'll come on to that. We could actually separate each track and compress each track, but for a general purpose, if I was doing a track, I'd generally get a rough level and then compress all the vocals together. So let's call this Luke. So we know where we are, good housekeeping, and I'm going to go for one of Logic's stock compressors. So we're going to the Dynamics, Compressor, and what you'll find is there's quite a good array of compressor presets. So we'll go for voice, and let's choose dance vocal. So that's going to give us a starter for 10. So
remember, this is a house
as you can see, the compressor's not engaged yet, and it won't do. It's set to, until I bring the threshold down, it's set to a ratio of about 6, which is quite high, so I'm going to bring that down a little bit. Mostly for vocals, I'll do 3 to sort of 5. The ratio sets the degree of compression above the threshold level. A ratio of 2 to 1 represents a mild compression, and that means when the incoming signal is coming in, the level will be above the threshold, raises by 10 dB, and the output level will only rise by 5 dB. Ratios up to 5 to 1 are pretty useful for vocals, and any other instruments you can go beyond that. The attack is measured in milliseconds and determines the time taken for the compressor to start working once the signal has passed through the threshold level. Why do we have attack? Well, sometimes just a hint of attack, say for instance a snare drum or a powerful downstroke on a guitar, makes it sound a bit more realistic. Removing too much attack on it though could make it sound a little bit fake. So for the vocals, I'm going to go for what they've said, 20 milliseconds, try that. And the release is going to set the length of time it takes for the compressor to return to its normal state once the signal's gone back below the threshold. And obviously the gain is to make up the compression, because as you'll see now, when I start to compress, we'll start to lose volume. So let me just do that now. Enough of my chat. I'm going to just solo the vocals themselves.
remember, this is a house that house built.
So at the moment, we're no compression, but watch what happens when I bring the threshold down.
House that house built. This is a house that house built.
So what that's starting to do, it's starting to compress.
This is a house that house built.
And any sort of loud
This
beats
is a house that house
in Luke's
built.
takes or composite vocals
This is a house that house built.
will be brought into check.
This is a house.
So if we look at our meter, we're pushing up to about 6 dB. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that up to about 6 dB, which is the actual dB that we've lost by compressing it.
House that house built.
So now when I switch the compressor on and off,
House that house built.
the volume's relatively the same,
This is a house that house
but
built.
I've managed to rein in any high levels of Luke's vocal. And also within Logic, you've got a really good choice of 7 different style of compressors. So the Platinum Digital, this is Logic's just generic compressor, kind of a legacy model. It's quite clean and fast. Then you've got the Studio VCA. They're known for being tight and fast, more of a modern circuit design than other vintage hardware. It probably mostly emulates Focusrite's Red Series compressors. And then you've got the Studio FET, which is kind of a field effect transistor. It's like an early transistor design, so that's kind of modelled on the URI 1176 compressor, if you're getting really technical. And you've got the classic VCA. This is another old modelled compressor, modelled off the 160. It's pretty fast, hard knee response, and it can clamp down on singles. So they've all got the different sort of takes. You've got the vintage VCA. You've got the vintage FET. So just let's have a quick listen through the various compressors, and you'll notice that there's a slight difference, and there could be a slight difference in volume, but they all give the different character depending on what compressor Logic's actually modelled them off.
House that house built. This is a house that house built. This is a house that house built.
So some are pretty subtle changes,
that house built.
but as you can see, the settings remain the same,
that house built.
and it's just all about
This is a house that house built.
getting the nice dynamic range across the board of Luke's vocals. So if we have a look at that in Ableton, the same principle applies. What I'm going to do is just group all Luke's vocals together. Apple G, just rename. And we can have a look at Ableton's own compressors. So I'd probably go for the Glue, which again I think is based on one of the famous compressors, maybe an SSL or something like that. So if you just solo Luke's vocals and loop it round, I'll show you the process of compression.
House that house built.
Okay, so again, there are settings already for Ableton. There doesn't seem to be a vocal one. Oh, no, lead solo. Maybe not a vocal one on here, but we can do it following the principles what I said before. So we're going to have an attack of probably about 3. Release of about 8 milliseconds, 4 to 1. And let me just play Luke's vocals.
House that house built.
So when I bring the compression, the threshold down,
this is a house that house built.
you can see it's starting to compress,
This is a house that house built.
which is cool. So we're probably compressing by about 5 to 6 dB. So all I'm going to do is just make up that to 6 dB.
House that house built. This is a house that house built.
So we've got relatively the same volume as we had, but we're controlling the dynamic gain of the whole vocal. And I do like the Glue compressor. I would recommend that in Ableton. Obviously, you've got other compressors like just the standard compressor. Same thing. You can have a ratio of, let's see, 3 or thereabouts. Attack. Yeah, about 2 milliseconds. Let's just put the release up. You can actually, on a lot of compressors, like I did in the previous tutorial on my preamp, you can actually have an auto release and attack, which is pretty useful. And also you've got an auto makeup here as well. So when I pull the threshold down, it'll start compressing, but it will automatically make the gain up. So let's have a look at that.
House that house built. This is a house that house built.
And as you can see, it's compressing.
This is a house that house built.
But it's relatively keeping the same volume. So if I take the make off,
House that house built. This is a house that house built.
you can see that the gain's gone down. So I tend to obviously leave the makeup on Ableton's just main compressor. You can get some good sidechain effects going on this as well, which I'll show you later on in one of the other tutorials when we go on about effects on the vocals. And also, let's just have a look at the same principles on some of the third-party plugins. Some of my favourite plugins at the moment are the Slate plugins, and you can get the full suite, I think, at the moment on a monthly basis for something like $24, which works out at about just over £20 a month, and it's an absolute no-brainer. I'm not sort of selling, well, I am selling Slate's products, but I've got the UAD plugins, and all these plugins, like the UAD, are modelled off some of the best EQs mixers in the world. They've taken the sound of them, and obviously UAD, you need a card to work them. And they're quite expensive. Obviously, Slates are, in the region of £100 per plugin, but they do an offer, and I think it's the way forward, to stop piracy and also make it accessible for up-and-coming producers to get access to some of the best plugins. So I'd highly recommend these. So let's put the virtual mix rack on and load up one of their plugins. You get like EQs. You get a virtual channel emulators, which is basically like putting it through a mixing desk, as though you put it through an analog mixing desk. So let's go for one of the compressors on the Slate. Let's try the FG401, and we'll set up a ratio of 3:1. Attack round about, that's 3, and just a slower release. The makeup's currently on 0. So when I start the threshold, it's going to start compressing Luke's vocal.
House built. This is a house.
And as you can see, the volume's going down as it compresses. So we're hitting 5 dB compression. So I'm going to make it up 5 dB.
House built. This is a house built.
So we're keeping the same volume, but obviously we're controlling the whole dynamics of Luke's vocals as a composite. So I generally put group the vocals together and then put the compression on as a unit. I tend to find that it's the same treatment for all the vocals. It keeps everything steady. And also on some of the compressors, you specifically this 401, you have a mix button here, and what that's essentially doing is
house built.
Essentially
This is a house
mixing the amount of compression that you can have on. So one of the effects of the compressors that was very made famous in New York was the New York compression, or parallel compression. And this was putting the compressor to a very high setting, so you'd absolutely smash it. Let's just do that.
House built. This is a house
and then you just put a little bit of that smash compressor back on.
House built. This is a house built. This is a house built. This is a house built.
And what that does is it just tends to thicken up the vocal. It's actually a technique called parallel compression. So that is more or less compression covered. It's what I would do on all of my tracks with the various stock plugins in Ableton and Logic. And obviously, bear in mind other really good high-end third-party plugins like Slate Digital, UAD and the like. Native Instruments have some fantastic ones. I'm lucky enough to have the Complete 10, and there's some great stuff in there as well.
As you can see, it doesn't matter what DAW you're using, the principles of compression are always the same. In the next tutorial, we're going to discuss applying EQ.